Museveni's son-in-law Odrek Rwabwogo and Minister Frank Mwebesa head Ugandan delegation in Washington, D.C. this week to seek AGOA reinstatement. On October 30, 2023, President Biden's decision to suspend Uganda from AGOA was a notable reaction to the nation's failure to meet eligibility requirements, primarily attributed to its engagement in severe human rights violations. While General Museveni publicly downplayed the suspension, encouraging Ugandans not to be overly concerned and emphasizing the country's self-sufficiency for growth, the actions of his regime behind closed doors reveal a stark contrast, illustrating a classic case of hypocrisy. While Museveni openly ridicules the United States, branding them as imperialists, the regime is acutely conscious of Uganda's substantial reliance on U.S. financial support. Beyond trade considerations, a significant proportion of Uganda's healthcare budget, 80%, is sustained by foreign aid, with the United States contributing a substantial $400 million annually through the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief PEPFAR. Museveni recognizes that a strained relationship with the U.S. jeopardizes this crucial funding, underscoring the delegation's imperative journey to Washington to repair diplomatic ties. Comprising Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives Frank Mwebesa and Museveni's son-in-law Odrek Rwabwogo, the delegation aims to advocate against Uganda's removal from AGOA. The delegation from Uganda is reported to be coordinating efforts with Dennis Matanda, former staff director of the Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Africa in the U.S. House of Representatives, and Dr. Olivier Kamanzi, the chairman of the Africa Global Chamber of Commerce (AGCC), and Uganda's trade representative to the United States. The delegation faces the challenge of illustrating concessions to alter the U.S. stance. However, the human rights situation in Uganda remains dire, with no public commitment from the regime to address the concerns that led to AGOA suspension. Following the opposition members of parliament boycott of the Uganda parliament on human rights grounds, Minister of State for Internal Affairs General David Muhoozi presented a government response in parliament last week to defend their human rights record. However, it failed to deliver accountability for the missing and abducted Ugandans and civilians subjected to trial by military court-martial. The government delegation in Washington, D.C. is anticipated to present a favorable interpretation of Uganda's human rights situation, despite violations being extensively documented in the 2022 U.S. Department of State Human Rights Report and the 2023 World Report on Uganda by Human Rights Watch. As advocates for human rights, the delegation's visit raises questions about the Museveni regime's commitment to addressing these issues. Tangible actions must precede Uganda's AGOA reinstatement, setting a precedent against human rights violations in Africa. It is crucial for the United States and Western governments to maintain a firm stance in defense of the voiceless. A taxpayer-funded delegation without substantial changes on human rights concerns falls short of what is needed. Trade is vital, but not at the expense of lives dismissed as expendable by the Museveni regime. The regime's dismissive responses to AGOA suspension reveal a lack of accountability and an arrogant disregard for human rights. Accusations of the United States imposing their values on Uganda are baseless, as human rights are universal and these were prerequisites of the trade agreement. Uganda must release political prisoners, cease trying civilians under military court-martial, halt the indefinite detention of opposition supporters, and rescind discriminatory laws to be credible trade partners. True changes must occur on the ground rather than sending delegations, including Museveni's son-in-law, to whitewash Uganda's human rights record. Dr. Daniel Kawuma Nup, diaspora team leader.